Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Friday and hang out with Chanti. I'm so happy to see you guys here. Um, huh, what a week! What a week! What an amazing week, actually. And I hope you I hope you guys have been enjoying our shows because if you guys didn't watch Jesse's show on Wednesday, you really should about the whole Greenland thing, which is very interesting indeed. But hey, so today, hello Lisa D. So today we are going to be talking about when did we start paying to exist? Now, I mean, these hangout sessions with me are really just hang out. It's stuff I see, it's stuff I find super duper interesting, and that I'm going to be sharing on like a regular Friday and maybe even sometimes a Saturday and a Sunday on the Rehum or the uh, Sunday Loop. Maybe have a movie or two every now and again, comment on that, see what's going on. So, yeah, I'd love to hear if you guys would like to do anything here as well. Hello, Phoenix. Hello, Lisa D. Hello, Charmaine. Nice to see you guys. So, yeah, we can do. And if there's anything that you've come across that you'd like us to comment on, yeah, that'd be amazing. But what I incidentally came across this morning, in fact, so the whole vibe for me has changed this morning as well. Yeah, my little tank top, can you believe? I know you guys are so cold there, but I mean it's so hot here. Yesterday it was raining. Thank God, we've so needed that rain. But today, yeah, it's boiling again, and the doves are walking around outside, flying in and out of here, demanding food. But yeah, so enjoy the snow. It's as beautiful. I know, I know, I know. Anyway, so what I was saying was that I came across this. If you guys remember, when we first started in 2020, there was this amazing woman. Gosh, let me just find her name quickly. Jeanette Ordengraaf, I think the Dutch lady. Let me just Jeanette Ossebaert. Jeanette Ossebaert, Dutch lady, right? Who did the series The Fall of the Cabal, which was amazing because that really opened so many people's eyes to what's going on. She drew a lot of attention to the whole Pizzagate thing, etc. She's since done a series, a sequel, also called Fall of the Cabal, the sequel, which I had not watched yet. And this morning, it somehow landed up with me watching this particular session or the particular episode that I want to watch with you guys today. So what I've decided to do as well is I'm going to hang out with Chanti for the next little while, is like we did with that whole Hissler. Oh, I best not say that. I might get myself slammed again. What's new? I'm like already just going doing, doing, doing. All good. Anyway, so you guys watch with me and we comment on it. So I decided to try and see if we could do this series, the sequel of Fall of the Cabal, because it kind of goes so hand in hand with what I wanted to chat about today anyway. Why are we paying to exist on a planet that provides freely for us, right? And of course, we can talk about the infrastructures and blah, blah, blah that go along with that. But who began all that? I mean, we can talk about, the modernization. However, it is what it is. And we are where we are right now. But it's interesting to go back and check it all out and then see what you guys think about that as well. So we are going to watch one of the episodes on climate change, which goes hand in hand, as I said, with what I want to show you, a little short clip afterwards. And then I've got a comment that I've actually brought up and just want to obviously, as you know, I always give my input on these things and, in my opinion, how we should be dealing with this stuff at this point in time, because this really is the time where the alchemy being the total transformation, lead into gold. That's really what the alchemy is. Lead being fear, pain, suffering, all of the issues that hold us down. And in so doing, by facing those challenges and by doing the work that we need to, the shadow work that we need to, we then transform, not transmute, transform that lead back into gold, which is creative life force. So, in other words, where your soul shines and you now fulfilling the purpose that your soul has come here to do. But you cannot do that unless you've transformed that which is holding you back. So, this is how we look at these things, right? And we're going to start. So, yeah, I'd love to get your comment on that. And so it's about 30 something minutes, this one. So get your tea, get your chai, or if it's the middle of the night, you might want another beverage, or your popcorn for that matter. Put your feet right up and hang out with me and watch. And then we're going to see what this is about, because this is super interesting. I've not watched the sequel. And in fact, I was reading on one of the comments that they were saying it's better to watch the sequel and then the original for The Fall of the Cabal by Janet Ossedart. Now, interestingly enough, before we start, what I wanted to say as well is that she's in January 2023, she apparently unalived herself not long after making the sequel. And of course, you all know us here with our tinfoil hats on. We are questioning everything around that. But so far, the theory is that she's unalived herself, but we know that. And then, of course, there was also those speculating that she's part of the system and giving us what she wants to give us, and or what she, controlled opposition. This is where we practice discernment, everybody. So for those of you who've been watching the shows on the Ankara field, practice discernment, use your body. If you haven't watched those videos yet, I really invite you to go over and watch them and start applying the techniques that I'm giving you guys, because that is going to be what gets us to know the truth from our heart space. So who knows who's controlled opposition? Everyone was telling me in the beginning I was. Do you remember how many people in the beginning told me I was part of the Black Eye Club? I still got my birthmark under my eye. must be the longest black eye in history, right? Anyway. The point I'm making is that lots of people speculate about a lot of things, and very often it's BS, because I know I've been on the receiving end of those speculations. And I'll tell you, some of the crap that's been sent around about me at some point in time is like, I didn't even know they were talking about me. That's how much nonsense it is. And how do I know? Well, I am me. I kind of know what I do and what I don't do, right? So let's be discerning, as always. Let's enjoy the show. And if you guys like it, we will certainly put some more up next week. And we'll, then for the next few weeks, just like Joanne and I actually did with the Hisler series, and we'll comment on that as well. But yeah, so over to me. Let's pop it up.
The World Economic Forum warned us all along. The next two crises, the ones that will make COVID-19 pale in comparison, will be a major cyber attack and climate change. The cyber attack will shut down the entire economy of God knows how many countries. People in hospitals will die Supermarkets will no longer be supplied. We will all starve or freeze to death. Well, if that is the case, then why on earth are they digitalizing each and every society? Smartphones, smart cities, digital IDs, digital money, the Internet of Things. If all of that is to go down, wouldn't it be wise to have a good old-fashioned backup plan? Maybe not so smart? But that's not what the World Economic Forum presents as a solution to a possible future problem. It is using the same fear-based strategy that has worked for centuries. Present a crisis of unknown precedents, leave it with that so that people can get really scared and turn to their government for help, and then present a solution. Pay more tax. If we all pay more tax, all of the above can be warded off. We, the government, will keep you safe. Just give us your money, comply, and all will be well. Next, climate change. Remember what they said back in the 1970s? 10 years from now, there will be an ice age. Remember what they said 10 years later? 10 years from now, acid rain will destroy all crops. Remember what they said 10 years later? 10 years from now, the ozone layer will be gone. Remember what they said 10 years later? 10 years from now, the ice caps will be gone, melted. What happened to the Ice Age? Those were the experts talking. Remember Al Gore and his inconvenient truth? Alerting the public to an increasing planetary emergency due to global warming back in 2006, plus a sequel in 2017? Well, guess what? None of his terrifying predictions came true. He did win a shared Nobel Prize, though. God knows why. The ice caps are still there. We didn't get submerged in a modern-day deluge. Even the dikes in the Netherlands, a country partly below sea level, still hold. And we're all okay. Then there was John Kerry. He is now US Special Presidential Envoy for Climate and speaker at the World Economic Forum, G7 and G20 meetings, where he shares his heartfelt, humble thoughts and emotions about saving the planet.
We, a select group of human beings, are able to sit in a room and come together and actually talk about saving the planet. I mean, it's so almost extraterrestrial to think about. Really, that's where we are.
Oh my God. It's almost extraterrestrial to be talking about saving the planet? Seriously? Well, maybe you shouldn't talk so much about saving the planet. Maybe you should actually do something. I mean, the man is loaded with millions of dollars. Do you know why he and his WEF buddies are still talking about saving the planet instead of acting accordingly? Because fear is needed to bring about extreme reforms that in normal times people will never agree to. Remember?
This is an opportunity to also do good reforms that in normal times people will never agree to.
That's what this is all about. That's why they keep coming up with new so-called catastrophic threats. Those extreme reforms were already introduced during the COVID pandemic. Rules of compliance, decimating our humanity. Total lockdowns of entire communities and countries, destroying trade, killing off small and medium-sized companies, thus creating shortage and poverty. Extreme surveillance measures, annihilating our privacy, and the gathering of biometric data. A very dangerous reform, as we have shown in our previous episode. COVID-19 was an excellent fear inducer. It was implemented to test our ability and willingness to comply. We are now moving to the next level. The cyber attack they keep going on about has been rehearsed 3 times. Cyber Polygon. Just like the COVID pandemic was rehearsed in advance as well. More excellent fear inducers? A new world war against Russia due to the situation in the Ukraine. There was even talk about a possible nuclear war. Excellent choice to scare the living daylight out of people. And of course, the bestseller, climate change and global warming. If people stop being afraid, the cabal will lose power overnight, you see. That's why climate change has been turned into a major threat. A trump card to push the Great Reset down our throats. Are we climate change deniers? Of course not. Climate change in and of itself is a natural phenomenon. It has existed since time immemorial, ever since the Earth was formed about 4.5 billion years ago. That's why there were ice ages, for instance. Global warming, global cooling. They came and they went. When the ice started melting some 13,000 years ago, were our ancestors to blame? Was it their carbon footprint that caused temperatures to rise? Of course not.
$350 is dangerous. Wow. Are you aware that since mammals have walked the planet, the average has been over 1,000 parts per million?
Yeah, but we weren't walking the planet. We weren't walking the planet. At no point during the past 800,000 years has atmospheric CO2 been as high as it is today.
The reason you chose 800,000 years ago is because for 200 million years before that, it was greater than it is today.
Yeah, but there weren't human beings. I mean, there was a different world, folks. We didn't have 7 billion people.
So how did it get to 1,000 parts per million if we humans weren't here?
Because there were all kinds of geologic events happening on Earth, which...
Did geology stop when we got on the planet?
Climate change will always be a part of planet Earth, with or without people. And global warming? For those are 2 different things, even though they are presented as one. Global warming comes and goes, like we said. Global warming normal. I'll ask you about global warming. There's only one valid answer. When? Which wave of global warming are you talking about? The one in the Roman period, when it was actually warmer than today? Oh, the current one. There is no current one. Ever heard of the Little Ice Age? Do you know what happens to temperatures when an ice age ends? They go up. It's normal. Now, if you want evidence that there is no current man-made global warming, do your own research. Read NASA reports and weather station reports. Read the climate papers of NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the American National Weather Service. Read those of the Met Office, the Meteorological Office, the UK's National Weather Service. Read the following scientific papers, written by people from NASA and various universities. Evidence for large decadal variability in the tropical mean radiative energy budget. Evidence for strengthening of the tropical general circulation in the 1990s. We read them after hearing Dr. Kary Mullis talk about them in a TED Talk. That's right, Dr. Mullis from our COVID episodes, the inventor of the PCR test, who died 4 months before all COVID hell broke loose.
The conclusion in both of these papers is that our theories about global warming are completely wrong. If you measure the temperature of the atmosphere, it isn't going up. It's not going up at all. We've been doing it very carefully now for 20 years from satellites, and it isn't going up. The place didn't get warmer, so the theory is complete. But these papers should have been called The End to the Global Warming Fiasco.
Listen to real scientists, the ones who refuse to be in on it for the money, the ones who risk their careers by speaking up and telling us the truth about this huge lie.
Climate has always been changing, but this has nothing to do with man.
A minute, you say this isn't caused by man. How come they're reporting this heat wave is recognised as the worst in 1,000 years of recorded history in Russia? And surely
of course,
man has got something to do with this, hasn't he?
No, nothing to do with it. The only connection is man is here at the same time as the sun and the moon are doing things.
Dr. Corbyn refers to the fact that the climate is a very complex system with a lot of elements that influence the outcome. Solar activity, the phases of the moon, the Earth's tilt, its elliptical orbit around the sun, ocean circulations, changes in salinity, cloud amount, and much more.
These things are dictated by solar activity in the moon. They're nothing to do with mankind, and those who say that are just trying to make money.
Well, how come then so many climate change scientists disagree with you so much so for what they say?
They're on a gravy train, for heaven's sake. They're making...
The government puts out about $2.5 billion directly for climate research every year. It only gives that money to scientists who will produce scientific results that support the global warming hypothesis of the Democrat Party. So they don't have any choice. If you're going to get the money, you got to support their position. Therefore, 97% of the scientific reports published support global warming. Why? Because those are the ones the government pays for, and that's where the money is. It's real simple, but that doesn't mean it's right. That doesn't make it true. If you get down to the hard, cold facts, there's no question about it. There is no significant man-made global warming now. There hasn't been any in the past, and there's no reason to expect any in the future.
One of my missions is to turn on its head the idea that carbon dioxide is a pollutant and somehow dangerous, when in fact it is the most important nutrient for all life on Earth, and without it this would be a dead planet. Scientific method has not been applied in such a way as to prove that carbon dioxide is causing the Earth to warm. If we had definitive proof that CO2 was causing serious problems, don't you think they would write that down on a piece of paper somewhere so people could read it? They don't have definitive proof, period.
Earlier this year, Dr. John Clauser was asked to talk to young science students in South Korea on how to become a really good scientist. He used this talk to share his opinion about climate change and about the climate gurus of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
Your work should be based on careful observations of nature. You must try hard and recognize what I will call an elephant in the room hiding in plain sight. I found an elephant in the room regarding climate change. I believe that climate change is not a crisis. The current world is literally awash, saturated with pseudoscience, with bad science, with scientific misinformation and disinformation for opportunistic purposes. Because, in my opinion, the IPCC is one of the worst sources of dangerous misinformation. I can confidently say there is no real climate crisis, and that climate change does not cause extreme weather events. Thank you.
When John Kerry presented his so-called evidence that the Earth's temperatures and the CO2 levels in the atmosphere showed identical graphs, he was lying through his teeth.
When there is more carbon dioxide, the temperature gets warmer.
What he didn't tell you is that temperatures rise and fall first. CO2 levels follow. The climate crisis bashers want you to believe it's the other way round. That CO2 levels go up first and that temperatures go up immediately as a result. You don't believe us? Then listen to real experts, like for instance Professor Ian Clark, geologist and Arctic paleoclimatologist.
Here we're looking at the ice core record from Vostok, and in the red we see temperature going up from early time to later time at a very key interval when we came out of a glaciation. And we see the temperature going up, and then we see the CO2 coming up. CO2 lags behind that increase. It's got an 800-year lag, so temperature is leading CO2 by 800 years.
Several other ice surveys show the exact same findings. Why didn't Kerry point that out? Why does the IPCC not talk about this? It kind of changes the narrative, don't you think? The amount of CO2 produced by humans is only a fraction of that produced by nature. Take volcanoes. They produce more carbon dioxide than all the cars, factories, planes, etc. put together. Animals, bacteria and dying vegetation release many hundreds of gigatons of CO2 each year. But the biggest producer of CO2 by far are the oceans. Meet Carl Wunsch, Professor of Oceanography at MIT, Harvard University, University of London, Senior Visiting Fellow in Mathematics and Physics, University of Cambridge, author of 4 major textbooks on oceanography.
The ocean is the major reservoir into which carbon dioxide goes when it comes out of the atmosphere, or from which it is re-emitted to the atmosphere. If you heat the surface of the ocean, it tends to emit carbon dioxide. So similarly, if you cool the ocean surface, the ocean can dissolve more carbon dioxide.
The warmer the oceans, the more CO2 they release. The cooler the oceans, the more CO2 they absorb. So, back to the time lag of 800 years between changes in temperature and changes in CO2 levels. Where does that time lag come from? Oceans are massive. They are so massive it literally takes hundreds of years for them to warm up or cool down.
If somebody says, oh, I'm seeing changes in the North Atlantic, this must mean that the climate system is changing. It may only mean that something happened in a remote part of the ocean decades or hundreds of years ago, whose effects are now beginning to show up in the North Atlantic.
In the past 120 years, temperatures have risen just over ½ degree Celsius. But most of their rise occurred before 1940. Since that time, the temperature has fallen for 4 decades and risen for 3 decades. Looking at Earth's long climate history, there is no evidence whatsoever that carbon dioxide has ever determined global temperatures. Not ever. Period. By the way, here are some important numbers we think you should know. 0.04% of our atmosphere consists of CO2. 95.7% of that amount is produced by nature. 4.3% is produced by man. In other words, 0.0017% of our atmosphere is CO2 produced by man. So, what about the differences between the scientific facts and the IPCC's predictions? Let's hear what Professor Clark said at a congressional hearing.
How do they model the greenhouse to achieve these temperatures? Well, CO2 is a very minor constituent of the atmosphere. The strongest, by far, is water vapor. And so water vapor is used in these models to drive climate warming. The model is based on a little bit of CO2 warming, which would be insignificant, is amplified by water vapor, a 2 to 4 time water vapor feedback. And this feedback effect has never been documented. It's never been seen in the geological record. And so it remains an hypothesis.
Now that's a very polite way to say they are spicing up the statistics, because the real data would never show a climate crisis. The problem with these mathematical models is they show you exactly what you put into them. They make it extremely easy to manipulate the outcome and change the narrative. Bearing in mind that the models were set up to serve politics, not science, they predict extreme heat, droughts, food shortages, starvation, natural disasters, and so on and so forth. They now even show preposterous headlines that the planet has entered an era of boiling. This is insane, as none of the scientific data even remotely points in that direction. And they can yell and scream for all we care about this July being the hottest month on record, but there's no evidence of that either. Now, we understand people make mistakes, but these are not mistakes. These are deliberate lies.
Before it is too late, within the 10 years that we have left to us.
The world is going to end in 12 years.
9 years.
There will be no future underwater.
Science is clear.
In the 10 years we have left to us,
I can't imagine there will be a human on the planet in 10 years.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
They're using mathematical models to predict horror scenarios, just like they did with COVID-19. Remember Neil Ferguson and his 2.2 million people will die in the US alone? Didn't happen. Apart from those murdered with a little help from midazolam and remdesivir. The climate models too are fraudulent, just like these COVID models. Designed that way by fraudulent people and paid for by fraudulent people and subsequently deployed by fraudulent people. The so-called hockey stick effect was created deliberately that way by flattening the curves before the Industrial Revolution, making it seem like a nice and steady line, after which they put totally exaggerated predictions into their models that subsequently spell out this insane graph. We wonder, Mr. Man, what happened to the Little Ice Age? And where did you leave the medieval warming period, And how come IPCC, One World Government Panel on Climate Fraud, how come you want us to freak out over a predicted hotspot of greenhouse warming when the real temperature readings by radio sonde do not show a hotspot? How come they show cooling? Remember those 2 papers we showed you 12 minutes ago? Well, that was just the beginning. Over the past months, we've read just about every scientific paper on climate change written in the past 2 decades, including the ones that are not talked about on TV, that are peer-reviewed and meet the strict requirements of science. What they conclude all boils down to the following. There is no climate crisis. Temperatures have been climbing since the Little Ice Age. Temperatures rise much slower than predicted by the IPCC. CO2 has never determined global temperatures. Not ever in the history of our planet. CO2 is not a forging agent, it follows temperatures. Warming is caused by nature and by anthropogenic factors, not by man. There is a direct link between warming and solar activity. Therefore, it's about time that CO2 levels and temperatures are decoupled. The amount of CO2 produced by humans is only a fraction of that produced by nature. CO2 is not a pollutant. It is plant food. It is of the utmost importance for life on Earth. More CO2 means a greener planet and increased yields of crops. Bringing down CO2 levels will have damaging effects for all life on Earth. more CO2 has not increased natural disasters. As a matter of fact, there's ample evidence that many forest fires were caused by man, not nature. Crooked politicians using crooked models to blame everything on global warming and climate change. Oh, and by the way, cold weather kills more people than warm weather. Thousands of scientists from around the world are now stepping forward and speaking up about this huge political fraud, this scam called the climate crisis. They have formed coalitions trying to reach as many people as possible, trying to prevent yet another useless and devastating global lockdown. Clintel is one of them, the Global Climate Intelligence Group. Clintel has released a World Climate Declaration signed by 1,500 scientists and professionals. The title of this declaration speaks for itself. There is no climate emergency. A global network of over 1,500 scientists and professionals has prepared this urgent message. Climate science should be less political, while climate policy should be more scientific. Scientists should openly address uncertainties and exaggerations in their predictions of global warming, while politicians should dispassionately count the real costs as well as the imagined benefits of their policy measures. 1,500 scientists and professionals who know what they're talking about and who refuse to be bribed or bullied into silence. Let's leave it to Dan Peña to say it as it is. In 2009, Mr. Peña and his wife were in a research facility in Antarctica. The scientists gave presentations about climate change. They had drilled thousands of ice cores by which they can tell you the temperatures at any given time, and had brought about a dozen to this presentation.
So they're going through the second or third core, and they said 275,000 years ago, this was the temperature, blah, 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 blah. And then 55,000 years ago, the world was 2 degrees warmer Celsius than it is today. And I said, well, you mean the whole world? He says, yes. And the poles are only benchmarks. And he said, it's all cyclical.
Mr. Peña then points out something interesting.
The best scenario vis-a-vis global warming is about 10 feet raise in water. If the water on the planet is going to rise up 10 feet, that means the southern part of the United States is gone. England is gone. Most of Europe is gone. Most of Central America is gone. If it were really true, the banks wouldn't invest. The banks wouldn't finance. Not one motherfucking condominium. The financial institutions, the banks of this world know it's not going to happen. Otherwise, you couldn't get a goddamn loan in London. You know those 30, 40-year mortgages? The world will be over by then. It's the greatest fraud that's been perpetrated on mankind this century.
The man has a point. If the climate emergency were true, would the cabal buy mansions by the sea? You were lied to all along, and the mainstream media was, as always, in on it.
They've already announced in our office that once the public will be open to it, we're going to start focusing mainly on climate, like global warming, and like that's going to be our next focus. Like our focus was to get Trump out of office, right? So our next thing is going to be for climate change awareness.
What does that look like?
I have a feeling it's just going to be like constantly showing videos of like decline in ice and weather warming up and like the effects it's having on the economy and really diving into that. head of the network.
Zucker?
Zucker, yeah.
So that's like the next
Pandemic like story like that will beat to death.
So climate change overload.
Be prepared, it's coming.
They lied about temperatures in general. They manipulated people by using new colors, red and orange. They lied about the skyline effect, adding warm buildings at night into the equation, making it look warmer. They lied by using feels-like temperatures instead of real ones. They lied by making you believe humans are much more to blame for CO2 than volcanoes and oceans and even decomposing leaves in autumn. They lied by telling you rising CO2 levels cause temperatures to rise, when in reality it's the other way round. They lied by claiming climate change causes health problems. They lied using fraudulent climate models. They lied about there being a scientific consensus when there is none. And they deliberately silenced thousands of scientists who were trying to shout off the rooftops that there is no climate emergency. Other scientists are, to use Piers Corbyn's words, on the gravy train. Or to use this lady's words, many scientists are in the UN's pocket.
You know, we own the science and we think that the world, should know it.
Glad to hear some cabal puppets are honest people. She adds that the UN also controls social media and that they're doing their utmost best to remove disinformation about the climate at all times.
We partnered with Google, for example. If you Google climate change, you will, at the top of your search, you will get all kinds of UN resources. We started this partnership when we were shocked to see that when we Googled climate change, we were getting incredibly distorted information.
The mainstream media does the rest by spreading lie after lie after lie, until everybody is too brainwashed to have a different opinion. But like we said, when you simply do your own research, it's not that hard to see through their bullshit. When you see this, ask yourself the question, what study? What scientists? Find names and follow the money. On whose payroll are they? So whom do they represent? Ask yourself, why is it not allowed to have a different opinion? One that can actually be defended with scientific facts instead of vague claims. Why are those who state there's no climate emergency called climate change deniers? Why should they be ignored? Why are they ridiculed, ousted by their peers? Why is fear being normalized? Why are we supposed to listen to a child instead of climatologists with amazing credentials?
Since the climate crisis doesn't exist, how can we expect people to want climate action?
Once you see through the bullshit, it almost becomes entertaining. Europe is the fastest warming continent in the world. No, it's not Europe. It's the Arctic. No, it's Africa. Of course it's Africa. Oh, hang on. It's the Middle East. It's always hot in the Middle East. Or was that Africa? Aha! It turns out to be the US. Well, at least part of the US. It's New England. No! It's Russia! It is always Russia! The entire climate hysteria is a fraud. Just like the COVID fraud, the Russian collusion fraud, and all the other frauds. They are there for only one reason: to keep you scared and thus oppressed. Why? So they can push their Agenda 2030 down our throats, including land and home expropriations, the destruction of our food sector, and the implementation of tri-state and 15-minute cities. The climate emergency was fabricated to turn us into prisoners in a totalitarian one-world regime. What they didn't count on, though, were the critical thinkers, those who did their own research and who refused to be silenced against all odds. Do you want to see where all of this will lead us? Then follow me to part 29.
Are you all breathing? Did you all feel where in your body your tension sat when you watched that? I mean, I'm kind of saying that tongue in cheek because for those of you who watched the Ankara field a week ago, we were talking about similar stuff and how this type of gaslighting and manipulation actually has such a massive impact on your nervous system and your entire body. So, for those of us who are feeling anxious and stressed out about what we've just seen, and I'm sure there are quite a few, because I look at this and I go, you've got to be freaking shitting me, man. You know, because we look at that and then a direct result of that lie is smart cities. So they've engineered all of that so that they can have smart cities at the end of the day where obviously everyone is contained within their little computer cage system and you are fully under control because we humans have been so bad that we have fucked up the planet. How dare we? So now we are ostracized to a smart city, whilst the creatures of the night, the controllers, are in lavish houses splashed across the globe. Yeah, it's enough to make, it should make us angry. It should make us angry, but it should make us angry enough to want to take action. So let this trigger you enough to take action, but not action where you go and destroy something, action where we seek change, constructive change. I mean, I look at that as well, and I think about the poor cows who for how many years now have been accused of having greenhouse gases, right? So that they are the biggest contributors to carbon dioxide on the planet. I mean, what the fuck? Who blames the poor cows for nonsense like that? This is also the source of the reason for weather manipulation. How many fires? How many floods? How many tornadoes? How many freak weather manipulation has occurred in the name of climate change? But we know now that the weather witches exist. And I think, or if you guys have watched our show on Wednesday with Jessie, she actually pointed out on Wednesday in one of our shows on Greenland that in fact that's where a lot of the weather manipulation takes place as well, as I like to call it, the weather witches. So all of this stuff, the destruction of our planet, the destruction of our forests, the destruction of our water system, everything has occurred because we humans are such bad species. Well, I will say that those who've been sold out and who've made themselves available for these atrocities to take place on the planet, because, we just look back to past presidents, elites, oh God, let me not even call them that, who have been complicit in gaining richly for their deception against humanity, right? Because we know that those guys at the top, they're not really human. Well, they certainly don't have human interests at heart. And this is why all the time with all these wars and shit going on, guys, we actually have to stand together. Doesn't matter what country you're in, doesn't matter what race, color, or creed you are. If you identify as human, fully human, and you'll know if you are, right? Because we humans, we have a desire to create change in a positive way, a deep desire, and not just one that is there for monetary gain. So if you are one of those, a human, then we need to stand together against this no matter what. When we're seeing our own people committing atrocities against another, we've got to stand up. We can't allow that to happen and just remain quiet. This is where that transformation, that alchemy that I speak about is happening. Well, as you can all see, I'm having a very warm day. I know a lot of you. Well, you all should be sitting with your feet in the snow. You know how good that is for you, right? You do know how good it is to have your feet where all your nerve endings are. What is that? Is it cryo something therapy where you sit in the freezing water? I have a really cold shower every day. So that's my freezing water, and I swim in the sea regularly. But what is that where you put your feet in the water, in the ice? So you should put that snow in a bucket and put your feet in there. It's going to trigger all your nerve endings. Boy, you're going to be healthy. You guys are going to be so healthy. Your immune systems are going to be fabulous. Strengthens your immune system, right? Anyway, okay, but yeah, I want to just also put up the next little clip, which I thought was relevant. I don't know, Mona, can you just pop that up? I don't know where it is.
Who gave them the right to charge us for water and land they didn't create? We should not be paying anything for our existence on this earth. Let that sink in. Let it scrape against everything that you've been taught. Because the most insane idea humanity ever normalized is that you owe money simply for being alive. You were born here without consent on a planet you did not create, under a sky that no government ever hung, breathing air that no corporation manufactured, and somehow you start life already in debt. That's not normal. That's not moral. That is not even sane. Explain to me how land became owned. Explain how water became a bill. Explain how shelter became rent, movement became a license and rest became something you have to earn after selling most of your waking hours. They didn't just monetize labor, they monetized survival. And the moment survival has a price tag, freedom is gone. Because if you must comply to be allowed to live, that is not choice. That is coercion, wearing a suit and calling itself civilization. And don't insult people by calling this just how the world works. That phrase is the psychological gag they stuff in your mouth before they tighten the leash. Miss enough payments and watch how fast the mask drops. They don't just take your house. They don't just shut off your utilities. They take your mobility. They take your dignity. They cage your body, all because you failed to keep up with the subscription fee for being alive. That's not order. That is a threat backed by force. Work itself is not the enemy. Contribution is natural. Humans have always built, always grown, always created, and always shared. What is evil is when contribution stops being voluntary and becomes a condition for survival. What is evil is when fear of hunger, homelessness, and medical neglect is used as the whip. And that fear is not accidental. It's engineered. It keeps you obedient, tired, and arguing with your neighbor instead of questioning the system that's draining you dry. No moral system, none, can justify charging human beings for access to the earth they were born on. If a system requires you to earn the right to exist, then that system is illegitimate at its core. And if hearing this makes you uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is the sound of a lie cracking. You're not lazy for questioning this. You're not crazy for feeling it's wrong. You're dangerous because you're starting to realize the truth. You were never meant to pay for your own existence.
So true. But then I decided to take a little look at what my AI said about that. So let's look about how land became owned, right? For most of human history, land was not owned in the modern sense. Hunter-gatherer and early agrarian societies treated land as shared, stewarded, relational, and seasonal, right? I know that from obviously living in South Africa, we know the tribes migrated all the time. And as I've often said, the First Nation people and the tribes have this idea that we belong to the land does not belong to us, okay? Oh, here we go. People belong to the land, not the other way around. The shift began with agriculture plus surplus, but it hardened with state formation. So let's look at the first point here, which is Roman law, land as property. One of the earliest formal systems that treated land as exclusive property comes from Roman law. Under Roman law, concepts like dominion, land could be claimed, bounded, inherited, enforced by violence. Roman law. This idea spread across Europe through conquest and administration. Land ownership became tied to power and not use. Number 2, feudalism, land as control. In medieval Europe, land was owned by kings and nobles, but peasants were allowed to live and work on it in exchange for labor, taxes, and wait for it, bum bum, military service. You didn't own land, you were allowed to exist on the land. The only ones owning the land were the kings and the nobles. So this wasn't freedom, but survival was at least locally negotiated, not abstracted. Number 3, the enclosure movement. The true rupture came when the Enclosure Acts in the 16th, between the 16th or the 19th centuries, especially in England, common lands where people grazed animals, grew food, gathered wood, lived without rent, were privatized by law. So where people were already existing, suddenly the government comes along and says, it's ours now. You've got to pay us or you've got to get off. People were forcibly removed and subsistence was criminalized. And I got to say that happened here because the African people are particularly good subsistence farmers. So obviously that means they're going to farm for a, in a small for their community or family or whatever, and then they will migrate again to the next area. So they leave also behind for the next one to come. That's how it worked, right? So that was now criminalized. This created something new and intentional, a population with no way to live without selling labor. This is the moment survival became monetized. How interesting is this, guys? I have not actually come across this information before. I find this so interesting. How water became a bill. Water was historically communal, sacred, governed by local custom, right? And as I was saying, those of you who were listening to Jesse's show yesterday, I was saying, the law of the land, L-O-R-E, which is what the First Nation people abide by, that was no longer allowed, really. But what I was saying before that, the regulation of the water and the use of the water, and I guess in drier areas, the people knew how to conserve water and what to do. And that would have been governed by the elders, the local areas, but it would have been a communal understanding. It became commodified through urbanization, industrial infrastructure, privatized utilities. Once water delivery required pipes, treatment plants, and maintenance, control shifted from that of community to institution. So now water has become institutionalized. The cost isn't just the water, it's the system that has monopolized the access. When access is monopolized, price becomes power. Morning, I want to just check that Nestlé guy that made that comment, is that thing of his on here, which is actually quite interesting at this point. Just pop that up. Is it on here? Is it this?
Ja, es gibt daher bei uns ein schönes Lied, Wasser braucht das liebe Vieh, Hollerei und Hollerie, wenn Sie sich erinnern können. Also Wasser ist natürlich das wichtigste Rohmaterial, das wir heute noch auf der Welt haben. Es geht darum, ob wir das normale Wasserversorgung der Bevölkerung privatisieren oder nicht. Und da gibt es zwei verschiedene Anschauungen. Die eine Anschauung, extrem würde ich sagen, wird von einigen von den NGOs vertreten, die darauf pochen, dass Wasser zu einem öffentlichen Recht erklärt wird. Das heißt, als Mensch sollten Sie einfach Recht haben, um Wasser zu haben. Das ist die eine Extremlösung. Ja? Und die andere, die sagt, Wasser ist ein Lebensmittel, so wie jedes andere Lebensmittel, sollte das einen Marktwert haben. Ich persönlich glaube, es ist besser, man gibt einem Lebensmittel einen Wert, sodass wir alle bewusst sind, dass das etwas kostet, und dann anschließend versucht, dass man mehr spezifisch für diesen Teil der Bevölkerung, der keinen Zugang zu diesem Wasser hat, dass man dann dort etwas spezifischer eingreift, und da gibt es ja verschiedene Möglichkeiten. Also.
I don't know how any of you felt what you felt in your bodies whilst watching that. I mean, there you see this arrogant white supremacist sitting there declaring that as a human being, we should not have free access to water. It's interesting how these things get flipped, right? Because what we were saying earlier on is that in the LORE of the land, of course, the community governs the water, right? Especially in the drier areas. So you have to understand how to work with water. I mean, look at the Bushmen in the desert, right? In the ancient times, I remember these guys, they had specific ways of collecting. The only water they would get sometimes was the morning dew on a leaf. So they would collect water on a leaf of a plant. So that's how insane they were, not insane, but that's how the lengths to which they would go. Obviously, they understood how to collect and work with water. And it's so interesting. And now, okay, you don't have a right to it because you are abusing it. So because you're abusing it, you have to pay for it so that you can learn how to appreciate water, something your very existence depends upon, right? Yeah, I agree. I would love to see that arrogant. Absolutely. He sits there in his office and he's pedicured, facialed face and he's whatever suit deciding that we, the lowly humans, should not have water. Yeah, we should put him on a dry fast. Never mind a week, half a day, you'll see that man freak out. Anyway, it's very frustrating. So, but let's breathe and hum, right? Breathe and hum. Okay. How shelter became rent. Shelter was once built by families, shared across kin, tied to land use, not profit. And rent emerged when land was enclosed, people were displaced, like we're talking earlier on, cities expanded, housing became speculative. Once land is owned and people are landless, shelter becomes scarce, extractive, and you can use it as leverage. Rent isn't payment for shelter, it's payment for permission to remain. And how movement became licensed. Licenses didn't start as oppression. They began as safety standards and coordination tools. But once the state claimed exclusive authority over the roads, borders, and identification, movement became conditional. Conditional movement equals a controllable population. So now think about now going from a country, a state, a city, a town, to a smart city or smart whatever, 15-minute city, digital city, smart cities. Think about that. And we're okay just with that, are we? Are we okay just to have our freedoms taken away one by one? Because by God, we're allowing it. We're allowing it. Every time we comply with something we don't like, we're allowing it. That's the thing. How earning existence became normalized. This is probably the most important piece. Modern economies are built on a quiet assumption. You must contribute to the system to deserve survival. Not contribute to community, not contribute meaningfully, but you need to contribute profitably. this is not a natural law. It's a design choice. It keeps labor cheap, compliance high, fear constant. Fear of hunger, fear of homelessness, fear of medical issues. Fear is not a bug. It's not even a virus. It's like a V8 engine in your body that starts up. That's what fear is like to the average human person. So the question is morality, right? So from a philosophical standpoint, many thinkers or many people say, no, of course it's not. Indigenous law systems, that, what they state, land cannot be owned. Natural law philosophy says existence precedes obligation. Some strands of Christianity, earth is held in common. Enlightenment thinkers themselves warn that property without consent leads to tyranny. But systems don't survive on morality, they survive on enforcement. So, understanding this does not mean that chaos is preferable, right? That we've now got to go and break down the existing structure with violence, or that violence is justified. Nothing has value or contribution is wrong. Work is not the enemy, and neither is contribution the enemy. The problem is coercion. When survival, when the very, humanity, human beings have a key survival core instinct to survive. And when the very core of our survival is threatened and used as leverage against us, right? That's when it becomes a problem. So we are currently living inside a system that we didn't really consciously consent to, did we? And we're alive in it right now. So I don't think we should deny the reality of what's happening. We have to acknowledge what's happening, and that we, through our consent, whether unknowing or knowing, gave consent for the system to be what it is. So we need to see clearly, without losing perspective or coherence, what's going on here. And history also shows that systems change or don't change when people are only angry. They change when people become hard to manipulate. In other words, we see the truth. We know the truth. We can't be manipulated by lies anymore. No one wants to have lies told to them. So, to sum it all up, land ownership arose through conquest and law. Common access was deliberately dismantled. Survival was monetized to enforce labor dependence. This was engineered, not inevitable. So, our existence is not morally owed to any system. But we have to realize that. You were never meant to pay for your own existence. We were never meant to pay for our own existence. But I guess we are here now that we know this to consciously decide how much of our being, our life, our sovereignty, we unconsciously are handing over. Remember, we talk things like attending events that we know are loosh harvesting, but we'll just go anyway. You give permission then. We know how that works. It's about conserving who you are and bringing that into alignment as well. So when we realize these things, when we know these things, they cannot fuck with us anymore. And it's that simple. You know, we stand up together. It's not about what color your skin is. And that's the beauty about actually learning more about yourself, because the more you learn, the more you're in alignment and the more you radiate, right, from your soul. It's like you see the color of the other person's soul rather than their skin, because your third eye starts opening, your pituitary gland, right? The very part that they tap the kids with for adreno, right? Well, when it's used in its natural way, your vision, I always say to the kids, your inner eye, your third eye vision is magnified hugely. You see beyond the realms then when you're aligned with Christ. It's not done in a sneaky, coercive way. It's done with truth and understanding. And then you know what you know, what you know, what you know, and then no one can screw with you because you know the truth. That's the thing. So when we start realizing and knowing how to work, how to use your body as a barometer in these times. And guys, I said at the beginning of the show, if you haven't watched my series on the Ankara field yet, the mini series on what it's about, that's where we're at right now. This is what we need to be really putting into practice and aligning with, you know, and understanding that the Ankara field is not a physical field that you obviously go and play on every day. It's the existence within and around you. You are the Ankh, which is the barometer. Your body is shaped like the Ankh, the perfect human resonance. And when you're in tune with that, you dance on the Ankara field. So here's just the series that Mornay's put up there, the link. This is what we're going for. This is how we stop getting people or stop asking others what's true and what's not true. God, I tell you, I see sometimes comments on Twitter and Facebook, and sometimes maybe podcast hosts or something like that will say this and that, the next thing. And then people will comment, oh, well, I so trust you. You, the person with all the answers. And I'm going, you've got to be freaking kidding me. You know, we put the information out. It's up to you to discern. We're not spoon feeding. Those days are over. So we have to come back into that place of coherence within, and you know when truth is truth and when lies are lies. You might not know exactly what it is, but oh boy, your body knows, and you will act in accordance with that. And that's how you start trusting your intuition, because your intuition is God's voice when you're listening from an aligned space. And when you're not in an aligned space, it's going to be that crazy monkey mind, confusion, anger, 20 million things going on in your head. Anyway, guys and girls, thank you so much for joining me today. Wow, it's been quite a long show. I didn't realize it was that long. Please let me know if you'd like us to continue with a series with Jeanette. Oh my goodness. Janet. Let me just find her name here. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with her name, so that's why I keep forgetting it. But I will be at the end of this, that's for sure. Janet Ossebaert, the Dutch lady who in 2023 unalived herself after doing the series on the fall of the Cabal. Today we did the series on the sequel to the fall of the Cabal. So I would like to, every Friday for the next couple of weeks, on Hangout with Chanti, do a episode like we did today on the fall of the Cabal and comment on it. So if you guys would like me to continue with that, I'd love to hear your feedback. And otherwise, if there's anything you'd like, and also what I want to do is do like movie days as well. So sometimes on a Saturday and a Sunday, instead of doing the rehum and the hum, if there's a movie or a documentary or something that we can just go and hang out and watch together, I'd love to do that as well. And then we can comment on it and stuff like that. So if you have anything you'd like me to air, please do. And yeah, Friday I will continue for sure, but I might add also the Saturday and the Sunday if there's more stuff we can do. And yes, in the field with Chanti. Yes, I've started doing the shows as well on a Thursday on Solutions in the field with Chanti. We spoke about peace in a time of chaos, finding calm in a time of chaos, and really discerning in the time of misinformation, discernment during misinformation. And it's all going in line with, this is not preaching to you about something. This is about showing you how to get yourself into that space and knowing and trusting what is true and what is not true. If you can do that, that's going to be amazing. Because then you don't need to ask questions to those around you anymore. Then you've got your hotline to God. And that's ultimately what we have. And we do have it. We certainly do have it because it's right here. But you've got to learn how to access it. Anyway, guys, Texas, I want to talk something about. Scared to do Facebook. Texas Real, I'm not really sure if you're saying you need help or something. Maybe you can comment further. You need help. You'd like to talk to someone. Okay, read about water wells in Genesis. Yes, water was already controlled in those days. Yeah, I think water has been controlled for the longest time, and water is the gold, actually. That is the gold of the planet, because without water, nothing exists. So it wouldn't surprise me at all, Sylvia, that the water was controlled then. I mean, if you go back also, I mean, in the 1400s, you're seeing like these waterways that were already created, always, and shipping routes, right? From the earliest times going across the waterways. So water has been very, very important. And again, if we're looking at the spiritual essence of water, Masaru Emoto, who is the author of The Hidden Messages of Water, every water crystal has its own shape. It's living. It's a living body. And it is unbelievably amazing. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you, Lizelle. Trying to figure out what this is. I don't know what this is. I'm Chantal. Yeah. Okay, guys. I'm going to say goodbye. It's like an hour and a half already. No, I don't think, I'm not saying you're crazy. I'm just not understanding what you're saying. And I don't really want to have a conversation on here. So you're welcome to email me if you are wanting to send me a message. I don't understand what you're saying. That's all. Yeah, email me, Texas. You'll get my details in the description area. I can certainly assist you with any of that. Okay, guys, take it easy and remember, hum yourselves into well-being. Watch the Ankara Field series. Work. Yeah, it's a process of being, doing, having, not just talking and going frenetic. We are actually doing the work of flipping the grid, of reclaiming our symbols, of reclaiming our spiritual gifts. Everything that's been stolen from us, like we've just seen today, we are reclaiming it. And we're not going to reclaim it by doing spiritual warfare on the battlefield. You reclaim it in your own spirit, in your own being, through your own sovereignty. That's how we reclaim all of these things we're speaking about. And when enough of us have reclaimed our sovereignty as a sovereign group, we move towards reclaiming that and flipping the nest. That's it. No violence required. no violence required. Doesn't mean you don't get sassy or whatever from time to time, but you certainly don't act on those violent inklings. Thank you, Lizelle. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's a beautiful Texas reel. I had a sign, 3 white doves grace me recently. That's a beautiful sign. I've doves, not white ones, gray ones, but they pretty much hang around me all the time. The other day, they were even flying in and out of here. Take good care, everybody. God bless you all. And I'll see you, I think, on the weekend, or if not, then early next week. We'll see you then. Stay cool, stay calm, stay centered, and keep humming.